Welcome in, everyone. It is week 2 of the NFL overreaction week. Best, almost one of the best weeks of the year, frankly, just with the hot takes and all, teams going to the Super Bowl already, teams already eliminated from playoff contention. We're going to get into all of it. We got a couple of good marquee matchups to break down, starting with Thursday Night Football. Right on the other side of this, let's get into it.
Give a damn about a hater when I feel like it. Not today, not today, not today, not tomorrow. Get out my way, please. I'm trying to get paid. Not today, not today.
All right. Yes. Thursday Night Football, week 2. We got Buffalo going against Miami. Two teams coming into this 1-0, Seth and Steve. I want to kick it to you, Seth, real quick, because I was a little surprised with the performance of Miami specifically. I thought Buffalo kind of tale of two halves for them. They came out really sluggish, had, lost the time of possession battle first half, but then really kind of overpowered a weaker Arizona team, frankly. But yeah, this one should be a good, fun interdivisional matchup. So our model says this is -2 in favor of the Bills. This opened at +1.5 actually. So let me get your thoughts on this matchup and where some value might be.
Yeah, and I think you were spot on. Coming into the season, a lot of questions on both of these teams, to be honest. Week 1, the EPA based stats, Buffalo actually ended up being the second most efficient offense, with the second ranked EPA on offense. But then Miami, interestingly enough, was the 15th ranked overall offensive EPA. And then for me, defensively, I think is where we had a lot of questions for both these teams. And I don't know that we got any more answers. Miami ended up being the 13th best defense in week 1 and Buffalo the 20th. And they had kind of similar games where they had to come back. They were kind of shaky. And, in the second half is where they, won the game. Unfortunately or fortunately, depending on where you're at in this, I think the numbers over the last 15 game sample show a bit of a different story. And that's a lot of what drives our model is a more smooth out sample and not just looking at one game, especially at this point in the season, but looking at an aggregate of who these teams are over a larger sample. And in that sample, Buffalo is really kind of the better bet in my opinion and in the model's opinion. I think this is now moved up to 2, and I think I saw 2.5s a bit.
There's 2.5s out there almost across the board that I was seeing earlier before we recorded.
Yeah. So I mean, we're fairly early in the week still, sitting here at Tuesday. I'm curious to see where this actually closes. Do we see buying at the 2.5s? Is this an attempt to try to get to +3s? I think if you get to 3, you have to take the Bills. It has to be a bet. Divisional matchup, like you said. This is in Miami, I believe, which they kind of have some weather advantage there as far as putting their opponent in the sun. I think that's maybe one of the underrated advantages there. But yeah, I don't know. My question I wrote here in my notes: who are these teams defensively? I still don't think that we know. Both these teams basically lost a bunch of talent in the offseason, and I don't think we know yet what that's going to look like.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that's pretty spot on. And for me, like, this is your quintessential coin flip game, right? And I think you're kind of seeing that. You saw Dolphins open up at -1.5, get up to 2.5, that kind of go back and forth between 1.5 and 2.5. And again, like Seth mentioned, it's early in the week, but will we see that 3 coming in here for home field advantage? And I think one of the big things on my end about who these teams are, it's you look at the Buffalo Bills, and obviously they've lost Stephon Diggs, Gabe Davis is gone, but the receiving core, I mean, Josh Allen really kind of spread that ball around. I think 9 different receivers got a catch in their win over the Cardinals. So it definitely wasn't pretty to start with, but ultimately Buffalo did what Buffalo was supposed to do. And same thing for Miami, but you got to take into the fact, okay, you can say Jacksonville's a weaker opponent. Than the Cardinals are, but at the end of the day, they both got it done. For me, there's 2 things I'm looking at. One, I think we're pretty clear that Josh Allen is going to practice and going to play. There was some question with that left hand injury, non-throwing hand. When he got clear for practice, I think it's when you saw the initial bump back up to 1.5, but we'll see how that turns out. But then 2, on Miami side, what's going on with their running backs? Are Devin Achane and Raheem Mostert are both sidelined as of today again. from practice, Mostert with a chest injury and HN with an ankle. So does this open up an opportunity for, Jeff Wilson Jr., and how does that affect Tua's pass distribution? I mean, this is a Miami team that we think of going deep downfield with Jalen Waddle and Tyreek Hill, but we look at their heat distribution of their pass map. A lot of it is kind of the dink and dunk. They're the quintessential bunt and home run team. They can hit you both ways. So I'm kind of curious how that's going to play out. But overall, I mean, I agree with Seth. These are two divisional opponents. This is too tight for it to be more than 3. And if you see that 2.5, 2 or 3, I think you just have to take the points, no matter how you feel about it.
Yeah, because where we put the number, and then if to Seth's point, if it gets to the 3, that's definitely going to be value on the Bills at that point.
I guess assuming not injury. Right, you've made a lot of good points here.
To Allen,
like Josh, if it's Josh Allen not playing, it'll definitely move through the 3.
Yeah,
and probably at that point, I wouldn't bet it. I mean, you make a good point there, Steve. I wanted to look at who these teams were in week 1, but I also wanted to understand who they were in that 15 game sample. And something I didn't realize, because when we think of Miami, I think of this really, really potent offense, but on a per play basis, they were middle of the pack, 12th best offense for Miami last year, but Buffalo was the 5th best offense. So I still think that that's probably what we should expect. Like, there hasn't been a whole lot changed. And from week 1, we kind of saw these teams be who they kind of were last year, at least some semblance of that. So I gun to my head here. I want Buffalo. I like Buffalo. I even not even gun to my head, just kind of wanting to bet it. I may just take action on Buffalo here, even at a 1.5. Like, it's not that crazy to me.
Yeah, and if you ask any Buffalo fan, I mean, if you ask any Buffalo fan who the best running back in the league, they're going to say Josh Allen. And that's the one constant you have. And we saw him do that in week 1, right? I mean, this guy is pretty much unstoppable from the goal line. No push needed. Shots fired. But yeah, I'm with you, Seth. It'll be pretty interesting to see. And then keep an eye out for player props, right? Keep an eye out for Tyreek Hill over under a half a rest pre-game. You can get on FanDuel for plus 1,000. So.
Plus 1,000, dang, okay.
Value. Talk about value.
Yeah,
God bless. I want to bring up something. So, okay, that's Thursday Night Football. I want to zoom out for a second here before we get into some other matchups here. Let's go to our NFL landscape and pull up our EPA graph here. So,
a whole new world.
A whole new world. And one thing in particular, some interesting stuff I saw floating around. I want to get your guys' take on it. So, for the past several years, the league has definitely been transitioning to a more pass heavy league, right? You pass to gain your efficiency. That's how teams are winning the ball. Running backs getting diminished, both in terms of contract value and usage, et cetera, all that type of stuff. But an interesting observation from week 1 is that there were only 8 teams who had a positive pass rate over expectation. Now, in a nutshell, pass rate over expectation is not necessarily good or bad per se. It's just how often were these teams scheming to throw, basically, given down distance, game state, et cetera. So, Steve, do you think, I mean, small sample size, don't get me wrong, but 1 week in, and we saw Jordan Mason step in for CMC as kind of like the exclamation point on this. Is there a pendulum swing across the league back towards running the ball?
Yeah, you would sure hope so if you're a running back. I'm really not sure how to take that, quite frankly, within 1 week. I think one of the things that we saw throughout this week was you saw a lot of rust from some of the holdouts. Looking at you, Brandon Ayuk, kind of cost me a little bit of money there on that drop touchdown. But again, you see a lot of turnover. The new quarterbacks of the era, Jaden Daniels, Caleb Williams. I know we're going to talk about the Bears a little bit later on this matchup, and he played like a rookie. And then the other thing I'm looking at too is talk about the advantages towards the offense, and this doesn't really have to do anything with pass first run, but you look at that Ravens game. I mean, they made an absolute example out of Ronnie Stanley on the Ravens line there. I forgot how many penalties he had for too many men in the backfield by not lining up on the belts of the center. I mean, that was absolutely insane. So you do hear that there's some things they're trying to get that pendulum back towards defense, which I think is fair. But I don't know about I don't have a good explanation for you for the passing stuff.
I think my explanation is you get 6 months to scheme, or you get 90 days to scheme your first matchup. So, it's just chess, not checkers, right? Like, all right, the trend is everybody's throwing the ball. Okay, so like zig when everyone zags, we're gonna run the ball. We're gonna have a lot of less concepts or less deep concepts, more tight concepts. I don't know. I think this is an evolving thing. I think one of the things I have an eye out for this season is how well we can measure basically how much teams change week to week. Like, are teams adapting to the defenses they're playing? Or are they just saying, no, we're going to run the ball, or no, we're going to pass the ball? I think I tend to think we're going to see a lot of adaptation where teams are trying to attack a weakness in the defense. That's my opinion.
Yeah, hey, listen, if you got 90 days to game plan for a team, somebody should have told Carolina, because Derek Carr, dear Lord.
Yeah, can we bring back the matchup map? I said a lot of new placement. This is kind of a whole new world, like a lot of new placing teams. Tampa Bay, the most efficient offense in week 1. I don't know if that's going to last, but so impressive to see. But who do we see not change? Carolina and New York Giants. They're exactly where they were last year. And our model picked up on that in week 1. Everybody was buying Carolina in this like huge step forward, and it just didn't happen at all. And ironically, of course, their offense was bad, but their defense struggled heavily in that game. Look, overreaction Tuesday, you said it after week 1, Kevin. Like, other than maybe the Browns, that's got to be the hottest seat. Do they go 2 years in a row firing their first year head coach?
Yeah, they look. I mean, and do they bench Watson? I don't know how you can.
Carolina or the Browns.
Yeah, the Browns. I'm talking about.
Oh, sorry, I was talking about Carolina, but yeah.
Oh, sorry.
Both. Do you bench Bryce Young?
Who is Bryce Young's backup?
I believe the Red Rocket himself.
Oh, Dalton? Really?
Yeah,
Eddie Dalton,
baby.
Yeah. You mentioned it real quick, Seth, but the top 2 quarterbacks in terms of EPA plus completion percentage over expected, Baker Mayfield, number 1, and Sam Darnold, number 2.
Called
Shout
it.
out.
Over 7.5 Minnesota. I mean, okay, yeah. Like, oh yeah, I'll lean in a little bit to the called it. I mean, that could get pretty rough pretty quick, but yeah, I mean, Sam Darnold, I saw a post that I thought was so spot on. What if Geno has a really good year, Sam Darnold has a really good year, and Bo Nix gets hurt, and Zach Wilson starts for Denver and has a really good year, and all of the first round draft picks from the Jets have really good careers, but it was the Jets all along that were the problem. Is like, maybe.
Not impossible for sure. Yeah. So week 1 is in the books. We don't want to obviously overreact too much. I mean, there's plenty of that going around. We're trying to keep things a little more balanced, a little more.
Can I overreact though? I want to.
Yeah, speak for yourself. I got some hot takes today. Go for yourself.
Yeah. All right.
Saints. I mean, I was very high on this team. Not high enough to take any Super Bowl, but I still might do it. I'm fighting myself from doing it. But we have their over 7.5. For them to make the playoff at plus 195. This team looked really, really good with the new OC. They looked so much more put together and so much more efficient last year. They dealt with a shit ton of injuries. So I'm really excited to see what this team does. They have a fairly easy schedule. And man, for me, the Saints are, I'm glad we have some positions on them.
If you're looking to sprinkle, plus 10,000 still available at a couple
for
of
Super
books.
Bowl.
Yep. Plus
10,000. I got to come clean. I didn't believe the market hype. I never pulled the trigger on Philly and Jets. I thought I'd be able to get better positions in week 2. And I was right on at least half of them. And I kind of believe, am I crazy? I believe in the Saints more than I believe in the Jets.
Oh yeah, that's fair.
Interesting. Okay.
There's an overreaction.
I think,
for you.
yeah, that's talk to me after week 4. Okay. But I think you're a little crazy on that one.
Okay.
But Steve, fair. what's your hot take then?
No, I'm gonna say my hot take when we get into the Saints Cowboys game.
Okay. Well, hey, let's not bury the lead, because why not? That's the next matchup. Let's get into it then. So New Orleans Saints going up against the Dallas Cowboys. This opened at 7 and is currently at 6.5. So not a ton of movement. Not a ton of line movement yet. Still earlier in the week, but would be surprised if it moves far off that. Okay, I want to get to your hot take, Steve, but an open-ended question to both of you, or to you first, Steve, is which of these teams, which of these defenses, maybe more specifically, was more impressive in week 1?
I think you have to say the Saints only because I think the jury's still out on Deshaun. I mean, we said, okay, last year Deshaun had no time to practice during the entire offseason because of the whole legal thing. He came in essentially fresh week 1. You expected him to struggle, and we saw him struggle all year until he got hurt. What's his excuse this year? Now, listen, I'm not trying to bash the Cowboys defense. I think they're going to be good. They're definitely an above average team. They're definitely a top 10 defense. But you look at what the Saints did, and yeah, again, Panthers are going to be an inferior opponent, but that was just an absolute bashing. Now, what I do want to talk about, though, is the offense. So you see here on the chart, you look at the offensive expected points, you see Dallas is there with 7, right? And it looks like, oh, man, they have such a great advantage on the offensive side of the ball over the Saints. And I gotta push back on this. There's this narrative going around that Dak got paid this huge contract and he rewarded the Dallas Cowboys with a great game and a stunning victory. And quite frankly, Dak had a at best mediocre game. Into the game with a QBR of 30.9, right? You look at his Pro Football Focus grade, his PFF grade, he was ranked 21st, one spot behind Deshaun Watson. And so, you look at this team, yeah, they scored 33 points. They had 2 offensive touchdowns. They had 1 punt return for a touchdown. And then you look at their 4 field goals. Those 4 field goals were not because of their offense. It was not because of sustained drives and success. It was because of their defense. They had one shank punt, and at the Dallas 44-yard line, they had 5 plays for 17 yards. They had to kick a field goal. They had an interception at the Cleveland 23, 4 plays, 1 yard, kick the field goal. Turnover on downs at the Cleveland 46, 8 plays, 14 yards, a field goal. And then finally, turnover on downs at the Cleveland 38, 8 plays, 10 yards, field goal. I am not sold at all that this Cowboys offense is this elite thing so far. Now, with that being said, yes, the Browns defense is good. Yes, I do expect regression for both teams, both the Saints and the Cowboys. Saints offense come down a little bit this week. Cowboys offense improve a little bit this week. But this whole, offensive mismatch narrative that's going around that Dak Prescott is leading this elite thing, I'm not buying it whatsoever. I'm looking at for the Saints, and 7 is too much. I think 7 is too many points, and you're seeing the market, at least now, again, it's only Tuesday, agree with that.
All right, Seth, I want to get your take or reaction to that, but I want to know if any Cowboys fans watching this, let us know what you think in the comments. I think that's pretty strong by you, Steve. I'm not gonna lie. I think game state and script kind of probably dictated some of the play calling, frankly, a little bit.
The 3 and outs, yeah, sure,
maybe, but I guess I'm not expecting them to be top tier necessarily, but don't forget the Browns defense this was the number 1 defense in the league last year.
That's fair.
Right.
For sure.
Yeah.
Last year,
sorry. So I don't want to diminish what that team is capable of defensively speaking. But yeah, Seth, let me bring it back to you for a sec here. What do you
I don't know if I'm as extreme as Steve, but I am definitely having a lot of similar thoughts and a lot of bells are going off. This is so much identical stuff happened last year where they come out, the market buys them, they're a little bit high on them, and they have this crazy defensive showing. They're okay offensively, but really defensively very, very strong. And they blow the team out. They look impressive. And then what happened in week 2? Didn't they lose to the Cardinals straight up? If I'm not mistaken, that was week 2 or 3. It looks like it's the same situation here. The one thing I will disagree with you on, Steve, here, but we're on the same side, is when we're talking about regression, I think the Saints are going to be regressing to a better offense of who I think they are on who they were on the field when they had all of their guys. You put this in this new offensive system, I really do think you're buying as low as you're going to probably see the Saints all season. We saw glimpses of it last year, but man, I mean, this Carolina defense is supposed to be a good defense. Now, with week 1, we don't know. Teams can be regressing and progressing, and we don't know that yet. But if we believe that this Carolina defense was good and what we saw from New Orleans, I'm not necessarily expecting this to be right now. We have them 15th EPA per play, but this team could be, top 10 EPA per play based on what they put on the field week 1. So I agree with you. 7 is too many. Kevin, is there any cheap 7s like a plus 100?
Cheap 7s, you ask? Plus 100. Yeah. So let's take a look here. Shout out Unabated Odds Screen if you guys are interested in using not only their odds screen, which gives you market maker books, but also a bunch of other tools that we use literally on the daily to help you make smarter bets. Use code BTB for a 5 free day trial.
Yes.
So looking at the Saints Cowboys, no sevens exist at all.
They've already been bought. No more sevens. So
no more sevens
points. Look, it's not EV. I'm tempted to just lay it. Like, I feel square in a little bit because it's like, oh, Saints were good, so they'll be good. But I think it is more of a leading indicator here that we're going to get all the pieces come together. And I just don't know what we're getting on Dallas's offense. I mean, I think their defense will be good, but I don't know what we're buying on offense.
Yeah. And one point to add to context for the Saints offensive that you commented on. So Clint Kubiak and his offense, new coordinator there, they were dead last in the league in pre-snap motion rates. After week 1, number 1 in pre-snap motion and number 3 in play action. So they are really embracing that schematic change, and so far through week 1, paying dividends.
And now I just want to running the ball. Sorry, let me just
go ahead.
One more point. When you talk about running the ball, they have so many weapons to do it with so many different looks and so many different formations. Like they're just a really unique offense. And who do they remind you of? The 49ers, who the offensive coordinator comes from and was the offensive coordinator, I think, for the last 10 years. So he has the exact personnel to pull off an offense that is the most efficient offense in the league. So I think it's pretty interesting to me what we saw in week 1, and I won't be surprised if it proceeds into the future.
Yeah, 100%. And I still want to end this conversation on this note. Pull up the meme. You're going to see here the "We Are Here" circle of Cowboy life. All right.
Yeah.
You're going to beat up on bad teams. Your fans are going to get delusional, and then you know what's going to happen, Cowboy fans. Don't do it to yourself. Don't do it.
Well, what should they do? Just be like, oh, don't get too high. Don't get too high. We're going to lose soon.
Yeah. Listen, so I'm a Bears fan.
Okay, I was going to say, we're going to talk about the Bears here in a little bit.
Yeah. All right, before we move on to our next matchup, just want to remind you guys, please make sure to give the video a like. Please, if you can, subscribe to our channel. Every week we're here doing weekly NFL shows, doing weekly college shows, breaking down matchups, giving you guys data, hopefully putting these teams and these matchups into context, hopefully giving you some more informed insight for your bets. Let's jump ahead, guys. Bengals and the Chiefs. This one is interesting. This opened at 6, and I don't think there's been much movement off the 6. Let me double check my own facts real quick here. So this is still pretty much at
6 until a cheap 6.
Yep. And actually, 5.5 now. Expensive 5.5 minus 115 for the Chiefs right now, but largely hanging around at 6 still. Question to you guys on this one. We talked about, having weeks, months to prepare for teams, and what about Joe Burrow and his injury situation? This was a hot topic in the offseason. How hindered would he be in the start of the season with that wrist injury? I don't know if you guys saw this, but there was a couple of videos circulating around of him kind of like doing this thing like on the sidelines and in the game. Like, is it right? I don't know, because he left. I mean, that team, he was missing T. Higgins. Don't get me wrong, Jamar Chase maybe a little rusty, but he left a lot to be desired.
Can I just say real quick? I'll give this stuff to kick it off, but this whole thing. Listen, as a former athlete, former little league athlete myself, world famous. That's ego. That's ego, man. Like, oh man, I'm having a bad game. Oh, the ankle. Oh, the wrist. But I will say shout out to Sports Med Analytics if you guys are on X and Instagram. He does a really good job about injury reports, and he brought this up. And what you would expect to see is really no lingering harm from that. Now, of course, that's speculation, right? We don't know. But yeah, before I kind of get into the hot take, you wanna weigh in here at all?
Yeah, I mean, first and foremost, he's just showing the haters his role. You know what I mean? He just got to keep it fresh because he is the KC killer. I mean, the model kind of agrees here. There's some value on on Cincinnati, and over and over and over again, we've seen the Bengals, be the kind of kryptonite for Cincinnati. I'm sorry, for Kansas City, and I believe this is in Kansas City. So this is even kind of more into the vein of what they do, kind of go into Kansas City and take care of business. I think also it's very confusing on what we're going to get from the new Cincinnati team. This is a team that you've already went over, Kevin, is missing a lot of pieces, but lost a lot of pieces in free agency. So who are we going to get on offense? Tyler Boyd, no longer in that offense. We obviously talked about T. Higgins and then Chase, but then defensively, they lost a lot of key players on the defensive line and the secondary. And if Jacoby Brissett can move the ball effectively, it's hard to not believe that Patrick Mahomes and that offense is going to be able to move the ball. I think you give that, and then it's still unclear who Kansas City is going to be. They looked really good at times in that first week 1 game against Baltimore. And then in other drives, they look like the team we saw last year that was kind of a little stagnant on offense. And so although I kind of want to be the Joe Burrow supporter in this game and believe the model, I'm partially happy that it's just not enough to pull the trigger on, because I don't know what I'm buying and selling here. I really don't know who either of these teams are yet. I don't know what's going on with Joe Burrow. I really don't know who Kansas City is. I don't know if they've made the full circle where they were good offensively, they won a Super Bowl, then they figured out how to win defensively, and then now they're back to being a super offensive juggernaut. That may be the case. We were low on Cincinnati going in as far as what the market was thinking. We were under the 10.5, and we're sitting here 0-1. And they lost to the team that a lot of people were touting as the worst team in the NFL. Now, we didn't buy that, but that's what, that was a fair amount of the sentiment. So, look, I get it. It's hard for me to recommend a bet in this game. I really think it's a guess. I think it's a coin flip. I don't think you have an edge. I don't even think the model very much knows what exactly you're getting here. I mean, 6 is a big number in the NFL, so I'm not surprised to see a tad bit of value. But for me, it's a stay away. Watch it, because you never know what's going to happen with these two quarterbacks. Some of the best quarterbacks in the league, if not the 2 best. But for me, it's a stay away. Unfortunately, it's just a no bet, unless you just love guessing.
So what's if you guys are new here, what's really good about having this trio is that you get to have a bunch of different personalities and really perspectives and shifting of responsibility. Like, who's going to be the responsible person that's giving you all the good advice that we want you to have here, because really this channel is all about smarter betting, sports betting education, and all of that. Now, with that being said, it's definitely not my turn, because this has bloodbath written all over it, and I'm so glad that this is not part of the threshold for us to bet here. Again, for those of you who are new, we're looking at 4% EV or better is what we trigger as our bets on the weekly standpoint. If you're Kansas City, let me rephrase that. If you're against Kansas City or you're a KC hater, this is absolutely what I was afraid of going into the season as someone looking to fade Kansas City. Is you look at that receiving core last year and what did they really do? Week 1, again, it's 1 game. Let's not overreact. But Rashee Rice looked good. Xavier Worthy looked like Sonic the Hedgehog out there. Yeah. And oh, by the way, Marquise Brown may or may not be back for week 2 as your speed threat. If nothing else, a decoy to open up the roof, a la Tyreek does it in Miami. I mean, I'm very concerned if I'm Cincinnati, especially from what we've saw. And I don't have reason to believe, and I absolutely could be wrong, but I don't have reason to believe that Joe Burrow's play was purely injury based. I think you have O-line questions. I think, like you both mentioned, they're missing T. Higgins, Tyler Boyd, and the other offensive pieces more than they probably realize.
Joe Mixon even.
Yeah. And if you think that Kansas City's defense is anywhere in the realm of what New England's defense is, and you think the Patriots defense is not nearly as good as Kansas City, I don't know how you can argue taking the Bengals here. At below 7. I think you need at least 7 in the hook to feel comfortable. And that's just me talking here. So I hear what you guys are saying, but yeah, I want no part of this. I think KC covers a 7 pretty easily. I would be shocked if it doesn't get to 7 by Wednesday night, Thursday morning. Let's put it that way.
Okay. Well, speaking of covering a 7 pretty easily,
no way. It's not getting a 7. There's no way.
Probably
aren't
won't.
You getting? We're getting early buying on Cincinnati, are we not?
Yeah, it's a head fake.
We are.
Okay.
Could be.
I mean, it is early.
Could be, yeah. But Steve, to your point about easily covering 7, I kind of feel the same way about this next matchup here.
You guys are square. You guys are square than square.
No, he said next. Baby. He said next matchup.
Next matchup. I don't know if you heard me, but coming in here.
My bad.
Yeah, now it's not square. Oh.
Bears against the Texans here. So this opened at 7, now sitting at around 6.5 in the market currently. But you can see here, it just jumps off at the screen at you. Our model absolutely loves the Texans. Now, caveat, and Seth, give some context or some color here too, but
Yeah.
you never really have the edge that you think you have, or
Yeah.
that you are calculated to have. So although our model loves Texans in this spot, and I personally love them as well, and it's a play officially for us, to
Yeah.
spoiler
No, it is a
alert it,
play.
but yep. Yeah, someone talk the good people out of just absolutely hammering the Texans, please.
Okay. Well, I'm not going to talk you out of not hammering the Texans. They're still 6.5. So I think it's a good bet. It's not quite a number, we'll say, and I'll talk to you about some of the nuance. So in our model, one of the ways that we gain an edge is we model quarterback data and quarterback situations. And one of our edges that we get is how do we look at rookie quarterbacks? And we have an average effect for rookies. And we kind of put them in this bucket for their first 12 starts. So first 6 starts home, first 6 starts away. What happens after those starts is quarterbacks basically become their own category or their own quarterback, let's say. So CJ Stroud becomes his actual self versus being in a rookie bucket. What happens in that real early that part of after you have 7 home games and 7 away games is that you have a really small sample size in your games. So in this case, CJ Stroud has 9 home starts. So that means he has 2 effective starts as himself at home. What this causes is quite a lot of noise because he dominated in those 2 games. And so it looks like he's super duper duper efficient. So we can kind of massage the numbers and say, okay, well, what would he look at? What would he look like using all of his data? What would he look like if he was still a rookie? And then what would he look like given the number we make here? If you use that and then average those, we get a number something like 9. So still a really, really, really high expected value and edge bet, especially at the 6.5, but not quite as the 18% would say here. And so that's some of the nuance. I do believe this does close at 7, whether that's square or not. And to me, this is really interesting from the data because these teams aren't actually all that different if you look at their EPA per play. Houston's the 11th defense. Chicago's actually the 8th overall defense. And then on offense, we're actually looking at the 18th offense for Houston, and we're looking at the 20th for Chicago. Now, this is over the last 15 games. But the thing that stands out to me is quarterback play. Again, something that we think is really important, something that's in our model and drives our model, is we're looking at CJ Stroud is top 10 in expected points added. And when we look at the rookie quarterback, it's and he's 10 points better or adds about 10 points per game over his career. He's done that. The average for a rookie is negative 0.18 points. So this is where you're getting a lot of the value. It is the quarterback play. It is what CJ Stroud can do even against good defenses. And he did that a fair amount last year. He struggled in some games, but actually, if you go back and look, when he played the elite defenses, is if those elite defenses weren't accompanied by an elite offense, he dominated them. We're talking Browns, we're talking Jets. I think Jets is the one where he got dominated, but every other defense that he went against, he dominated. And I think it's going to be the same thing here. You're looking at quarterback play, you're looking at CJ Stroud to kind of lead you to the promised land with this bet.
Okay, Steve, let me know what you think, because last week, we're short the Bears for the season long, right? We got their under win total, but this is a team in week 1 that scored on special teams, they scored on defense, and they inevitably won, and they covered even because of those factors, So that type of stuff, how much that carries over week to week, that's highly variable. Not something you can count on week to week, basically. So what, in your mind, based off what you heard Seth say and everything else, what fighting chance does Chicago have here?
Now, I had a quick question. If good teams win, but great teams cover, and the Bears covered, what does that make them?
Great team.
Yeah. Look, I mean, listen,
flawless logic, frankly.
If you can't tell by now, I'm the resident Bears fan in the group here. So what you're looking at here, right? You talk about the quarterback play, and I think that's really where this is going to hinge on, right? Yes, the Bears came back from a 17-point deficit to win that game, but Caleb fully played like a rookie. And I know all the media hype was on him all year long, but I think if you talk to anybody that actually watches football, you saw this coming. I mean, he had a QBR of 23.5. CJ Stroud had his like 78.6 or something like that. I mean, like you're looking at different levels of play, and you expect Caleb to continue to struggle until he kind of finds his footing. In the meantime, can he rely on a run game with a pretty deep running back core in Chicago and the defense to kind of hold him through? And that to me is going to be the make or break thing in this matchup is can Chicago's defense contain CJ Stroud, and can Caleb Williams play well enough to effectively be a game manager and not be a superhero? Now, with that being said, I am, this is one of our plays you're going to hear us say, a couple more times here. And reluctantly, I am on this bet, one for the model, but two, because I do believe it's a good bet. One of the things I would look out for is Rome Odunze. So he has an MCL sprain. He's week to week. He's questionable as of right now. And Keenan Allen re-aggravated that foot injury. Now, he's expected to play, but I mean, at 35, that re-injury risk is pretty high. And he's already kind of, had that linger a couple of times, over the last year. So if one or both of these guys are significantly hindered or out, Caleb's in trouble. Caleb's in trouble, and this team is absolutely one-dimensional, which spells nothing but doom and gloom for the Chicago Bears. So I think 6.5 is great. Taking off my Bears fandom hat and whatnot, kind of getting back to giving you guys good advice. 6.5 is a good number. I think 7 is as far as you realistically should go, unless you see some of these injuries, because this has the ability to either be a close game or it could be an absolute blowout if Chicago is not up to par on offense and not healthy on offense.
You couldn't be more right. The moment you've moved through that one possession game at 6.5 and you go to 7, you plummet your EV. Now, we already talked about we don't actually make this game 11. It's probably somewhere around in the 9.5 to 8.5 is probably the true line that we would make it. So I agree. I wouldn't touch this. I would point out though, depending on when you're seeing this, like there's only one 6.5 at the market maker. The other two are at 7, if I'm not mistaken. The moment that gets bought at Circa, it's all going to 7. So say goodbye to this bet. So I wouldn't be waiting for injury. You want to make this bet before that injury. The moment one of those guys is ruled out, this is going to 7.5, and there's no more value. So
you are correct. Bookmaker, Pinnacle, both hanging a 7. Circa only at 6.
Circa's the one saving you. So ask yourself why. Why? Right? Someone's probably bet this at a pretty low limit to get it down to 6.5, so that tomorrow or Thursday, when they can get down 50 grand, they're going to hit this with a 7 for at the 6.5 to move to 7. So I would caution you to wait. Yep. If you agree with it. Maybe you're a Bears delusionist, but we think it's a really good bet. This is I don't even want to hate on the Bears. I just want to bring it back to this point. We talked about this in the season preview. These kumbaya, everything is just going to go your way. Like everything's just going to go into place. You're just going to flawlessly pick the number one talent that's ever come through. It's a no-brainer. No one's going to get injured. You're just going to fly through the season. That is exactly what does not happen in the NFL. It is literally the average outcome is chaos, not chaos, right? And this is a good example. Already, their number one two wide receivers are potentially out or at least are questionable in going into this game. And you had what do you throw 100 yards in the first week? I mean, that's what the NFL is.
93, if I believe. Yeah, 93, 100.
Steve had to fact check you on that one for sure. I knew he knew, but yes. No, point well taken, man. And I don't know. If it does get to the 7, I'll be fascinated. Probably will at that point. We'll probably have to do with injuries, and maybe one or two of both of those guys will be limited and or out. So we'll see. We'll see what happens in that one. Let's move to Monday night. We got one more matchup, shall we? To break down here. Atlanta Falcons, Philadelphia Eagles, baby. So this one opened at 6.5, and absolutely stalemate, no movement whatsoever in the market right now. So still early in the week, but our number makes it 6, so no value on either side right now. But kind of an underwhelming debut for Kirk Cousins and that Falcons team, losing just outright to Pitt. They struggle to generate much efficiency offensively speaking. But this was one of the teams last year that was correct. Someone fact check me, but either number 1 or number 2 in defending the run last year. And so they had some pieces in place, and they were a decent team on that side of the ball. But I don't think they were. I don't know, man. I feel like they weren't prepared for Justin Fields. If that's as strange as it is to say that, they got
decimated on the defensive line in free agency. I mean, decimated.
Yeah. So you have that point. I was not impressed with their week 1 performance at all. And so coming in here now against Philadelphia week 2, yeah, 6.5. I'm glad this doesn't show any value on the Falcons for sure, because I would be freaked out. But Seth, let me know what do you think here? Is this what else is going to be key in this matchup for the Falcons to hang?
Yeah, for the Falcons to hang, they got to get a lot better on offense, and they got to get a lot better quick. We're talking about the 24th EPA based offense going up against the 24 based EPA defense. But the thing I want to point out is who these teams played in week 1. So although Atlanta was able to stop Justin Fields, are we really looking at Pittsburgh to be this offensive juggernaut? We know that they're going to struggle offensively. But on the other hand, if you look at the data, Green Bay is one of the most offensively efficient teams. And so the fact that Philly was able to slow them specifically in the second half and hold them at the end of the game, maybe a more impressive data point here, given that we're only working with one, week of data. And so if I were to take a bet here, unfortunately, I'd kind of lean in the opposite direction of the model. I'd probably go ahead and lay the 6.5 on the Eagles, just because I feel like I'm buying an upswing with the Phillies, with the Eagles, where okay, maybe they figured out the defense. They've brought in a bunch of pieces in. The offense looked pretty efficient. But Atlanta, I don't know what I'm buying. And I have some concerns with how healthy Kirk Cousins is. He did not look like he was necessarily ready to go. He was not driving the ball with his foot, and it led to a couple different interceptions. This Philadelphia Eagles defense is probably going to get pressure. So is this just the same thing repeating as it was in week 1? Now, I'm not saying the Eagles are as good as Pittsburgh on defensively, but they have the defensive line to get pressure, on a couple dropbacks. So for me, it's really hard to buy the Falcons. I don't know what we're buying. They did it to themselves. Like, is it Penix time? Like, I don't think that that's crazy, because this team on paper is actually very talented. And so if you only had to play him for one drive in the preseason and you know who you had, then throw him in, like, because I feel like he's going to give you a better chance going forward than Kirk will. And that's unfortunate to say, but the reality is he just didn't look like his old self last year.
Wow, that's interesting. Yeah, Steve, any last takeaways for this one, or Michael Penix call? Wow.
Yeah.
And
I mean, this game feels like a Thursday night game. Like, those Thursday night games, like, oh God. And like, yeah, it's football
on Monday night.
technically,
Yeah.
but God, I don't want to watch this. I mean, we talked about the Eagles' fall from grace, coming into the back half of last season. And what are we getting here? And yeah, I mean, that defense definitely got carved up. Not to Seth's point, and I don't want to admit this, but yeah, I mean, the Packers and Jordan Love definitely are a very efficient offense. And so I'm not overly concerned about that. I think they'll figure that out. And Atlanta's definitely a great get right game for them. But speaking of Atlanta's offense, I mean, this is pretty abysmal. I'm going to watch this game mostly for the running back matchup. I want to see Bijan versus Saquon. Saquon had a hell of a debut for Philly, so I want to see how that turns out. But this is bad. I mean, Kirk Cousins, I would never call Kirk Cousins a mobile quarterback, but I mean, Seth's absolutely right. I mean, he looked absolutely horrible. I mean, I would say Kirk was more stiff than a sock underneath the bed in a teenager's room. You know what I mean? Like, that is absolutely not going to work against the Philadelphia Bulldogs. We come all the Georgia grads who are on Philly now. But yeah, I'm with you. I think if you have to take a position in this game, you have to take Philadelphia until proven otherwise. And yeah, maybe Penix gets the second half start. You never want to wish injury on anybody. Don't get me wrong, but this just seems absolutely dangerous for Kirk. And the quicker they get him out of here, I think the better for Atlanta.
Interesting. All right. Sounds good. I want to remind everyone before we hop into our model predictions, thank you for watching. Please make sure you hit the like button. Please make sure you subscribe to the channel. Helps us out tremendously. We're going to keep doing these things for you guys every single week. Let's hit it, boys. We got model predictions, NFL week 2. Let's bring up the plays here. So talked about a couple of them already, but Seth, let's run through, I guess, let me high level take real quick. I love the Texans. We established that. But looking at the card going into week 2, based off what we know from week 1 already, what stands out on the card? What do you love? What do you hate?
Well, the first thing I love is that we went 4-1 in week 1. That was a big I don't know. Just going to week 1 is the most stressful week because you have to literally sit with your bets for for like 90 days. And literally we bet 4 games when the spreads open. They all won. The one that we lost was the one that we got value in late in the market, like 3.5 for the Raiders. So that's the first thing. But for looking into week 2, I'm kind of like so 180 where I was last year. I'm kind of sick with it now. I love the Packers bet. I love it. Like, this makes me feel like the smartest person in the world, even though I don't care if they lose by 20. Like, this idea that we're kind of leveraging one of the strengths of the model, which is quantifying uncertainty around quarterback. This is exactly what the model and when the model shines. And we're making this number not a pick 'em. We're making it way off market. This opened at 3, moved to 3.5. We think the 3.5 is a huge value bet. We've bet it. We've even laid some juice. We have a 3.5 minus 115. So that's probably the kind of weird part of it. And then I'm kind of going for my revenge. Ravens week 2, we bet on Lamar versus Minshew last year when he was on the Colts, and somehow Minshew, even though he gave up a safety and like 20 sacks, not only covered that game for the Colts, they won. And so I'm looking for my revenge here on the Raiders team, which we have as the dead last offense in the NFL. So those two are kind of my favorite. A little unfortunate we didn't get the Lions either. That one kind of sucks. We weren't able to get bet it ourselves. We weren't able to give it to our clients. But it is what it is. Market just moved too fast for us.
All right, Steve. What else?
Yeah, I'm 49ers. God, I'm loving the 49ers. And so, we talked about, the whole CMC thing and Jordan Mason coming in and this is the San Francisco has a system. I don't care who you are or what you do. If you fit in that system thrives. And we saw that last night. Now, I think, again, that's probably a little bit of an over performance, maybe, but I'm looking at the 49ers to continue to move the role. And then, unfortunately, I kind of like the Texans bet at minus 6.5, but I'm telling myself I'm only telling myself I like that because the Bears are going to have some injury issues for Caleb to deal with. Otherwise, it'd be Bears alt line minus 23.5.
But honestly, a win-win for you. If Houston wins 6.5, you cover, and it's like, shout out the model, I want some money. If the Bears win or cover, it's like, a moral victory. It's like, oh, okay,
no, because they'll just break my heart later in the season. There is. Okay. See, this is what Cowboys fans need to learn. You don't get overly excited. If you keep your hopes and your expectations low, you'll never be disappointed.
Eric, the producer, says moral victories are for minor league coaches, I guess. So, look, I get it. I agree. Can we bring back the model output one more time? I just want to run through them really quick.
Let's do it.
So, what do we actually have for going into week 2? We're on Houston minus 6.5, Baltimore minus 8, New England plus 3.5 minus 115, Green Bay plus 3.5 minus 115, and San Francisco minus 5 minus 110. Those are the bets that we actually were able to place and get and give to our clients. And that's what we're rolling for with week 2. If at any time in the market, if it's not due to injury, you can grab a 6.5 for Detroit. We would bet it. We will be betting it. I don't think it's going to happen, but if you see it, it is a bet.
Yep. Something to keep an eye on for sure. So 5 more official plays right now, maybe a 6, long shot to maybe be a 6, but who knows? So yeah, good performance week 1, hoping for another in week 2. One more, maybe last caveat here. We had a lot of we performed well in college this past weekend too, and 12-2, I think officially 12-3. We talk about this on our website. We're as transparent, I think, as anyone can possibly be in this industry. When it's all said and done, when the dust settles, we have a projected win rate of about 56 to 58%. So do we expect to go 4-1 every week?
No, we won't go 4-1 every week.
Yeah, and it won't. There will probably be some weeks where we go 1-4. It happened last year. There's probably going to be some weeks where we go 0-4. So just as a friendly reminder to anyone out there watching who may not be familiar with our stuff or understanding maybe what a true win rate, in the NFL looks like. We're happy with where we're at, what the model's doing so far. It's only week 1, boys. We got a lot of season to go, but yeah, great start. Great start. Looking forward to another week 2 performance as well. So that will do it for us, boys. I think I'm glad to be with you again. We will be back next week breaking down more matchups, talking models, talking data. Again, don't forget to hit the like button. Don't forget to subscribe. Appreciate y'all being here with us. We're out. We'll see you next week. Peace.
Take care.